Welcome back to SaharaTV. My name is Rudolf Okonkwo. We are continuing our coverage, special coverage of the inauguration of President Muhammadu Buhari. Now we are going to go to Connecticut to talk to Professor Okey Ndibe. Professor Ndibe is the author of Foreign Gods Incorporated, amongst other books. Professor Ndibe, welcome to SaharaTV. All right, I understand that we lost him briefly, and we're going to try to get him back. And when we get him back, we are going to talk about his impression of what happened today. A lot of people are weighing in, and we are going to give you the chance to weigh into and let us know what you think about the events of this historic day. We have a new president in Nigeria, President Muhammadu Buhari. What are your expectations? Are things going to change? Everybody seems to be hoping, and we are optimistic, but what are the realities on the ground? He talked about several things. I was struck by many of the discussions around some of the things in his speech. He talked about the shame that a country like Nigeria, with over 180 million people, could only generate 4,000 megawatts of electricity and even distribute less of that number. So we're going to discuss this, and he talked about the fact that we've invested over $20 billion since 1999. Yet we have darkness, frustration, misery, and resignation among Nigerians over the issue of power. There is the same question about the issue of fuel, petrol, the fact that we are a top country in the world in terms of production of fuel, but we cannot produce crude oil, but we cannot refine it and for our people. So we understand that we now have Professor Ndibe back, and we are going to go to him. Professor Ndibe, welcome back to SaharaTV.
Thank you very much. My delight.
Yeah. Okay, I introduced you as the author of the book Foreign Gods Incorporated. And I wanted to say, based on what happened today, do you think that democracy is now established in Nigeria?
Well, I don't think one can make a claim as broad and large and ambitious as that. But we can say that this is today represents a very important step on the path of democratic growth in Nigeria. I don't think we can say that democracy has arrived. I would say that we've turned the corner. And today is a very important day in the evolution of what one hopes will become a very vibrant democratic culture in our country.
Okay. So what is your impression of the speech, general impression first, then we go into details?
I think that Buhari gave a truly brilliant speech. I think that the speech was short, relatively. The speech strikes very important notes. That the speech perhaps was calculated to be reassuring to all kinds of political interests in the country who expect or who fear that Buhari might become.
Are you there? Professor Ndibe? Okay, I understand that we have connection problems with Professor Okey Ndibe, and we are going to try to reconnect with him and continue our conversation. We want to know what he thinks about the speech that Buhari gave today and the general impression of the mood of the country, the expectations of people about the incoming, the administration that just came in, and whether the expectations are something realistic. Also, we want to address the issue of the Niger Delta, which was discussed in the speech. Buhari mentioned that the amnesty program will end in December. but that the government, his government, will continue to invest in the place, in the Niger Delta. There are other issues that we've not touched in our conversation. For instance, the judiciary. How are we going to make sure that they play their role? Buhari mentioned the fact that the judiciary needs reform to cleanse itself from its immediate past. Of course, you know the breakdown of the government. If the judiciary is not functioning, the executive may not be able to implement some of the things they want to see implemented. We are going to touch on Boko Haram too, because it continues to be an issue. News report is saying that today there was a bomb blast. So the Boko Haram people are still putting themselves in the conversation. And we know that Buhari spent a considerable amount of time talking about Boko Haram and what needs to be done and how that should be dealt with. Of course, we will talk about the general atmosphere of the country, what is possible, what is not possible. We know that the former president, at the last minute, submitted the National Conference report to the National Assembly. I'm sure that they did not do anything with it, but I think he wanted to put that in as part of the conversation, something that the incoming administration will have to deal with in some ways. Every other thing that is necessary, okay? I understand that we have Okey Ndibe back. Professor Ndibe, welcome back to SaharaTV.
Thank you very much. I must apologize for this technical malfunction.
I mean, people in Nigeria, we had better connections with them. Maybe we should talk to the governor of Connecticut. Okay, all right. All right, let's go. So what you were talking about the speech, your general impression of the speech.
Yes, I was saying that Buhari's speech struck me as reassuring, struck me particularly as an attempt by him to allay the fears of those in the country who fear that he's going to become a vindictive president. And so he does two things at once. He says, I have more noble pursuits than a vindictive agenda. And then he lays out what he believes to be the challenges facing Nigeria at this time, and therefore the focus of his administration. And I think that altogether it's a terrific speech.
What particular line spoke to you? Most people have been pointing out the line that says, I belong to everybody and I belong to nobody.
That was a particularly brilliant rhetorical move on the man's part. If you remember, throughout his career as a presidential candidate, which he was a presidential candidate, I believe, 4 times. Every time that he's run, one of the attacks against him was that he was sectional and that he was a fundamentalist Muslim who could not be trusted in a pluralistic Nigeria. And so when he says that I am the president for everybody and I belong to no one, I think that is a very important claim, and I think that it's a statement that Nigerians should remind him to live up to every day of his presidency. And it's a stroke of genius that he said that.
Now, there were other instances where he made references to what he plans to do, and that you just talked about it, that he's not going to go back and start probing people or witch hunting people. Do you think that it's possible to move forward without resolving unresolved issues of the past?
I don't think so, and I think that, but I think that he leaves room, that he doesn't. If you read him carefully, nothing that he said today precludes the option, and what I in fact think must be the imperative of revisiting issues of corruption and abuse of office in the past. If Buhari fails to address those issues, I think that he's going to already betray one of the most important expectations of Nigerians, which is that he needs to bring people who have wrecked the country by their vicious greed to account. And so it's one of those moments where I had a pause. I've warned recently in my columns that there has to be a kind of inventive and ingenious approach to addressing corruption, the issues of corruption in the country. It can become a full-time job that will easily consume the 4 years of his presidency. So it's important that he's saying to Nigerians, I have a much broader agenda. But even so, he has to lay out a policy, an even-handed policy, a fair policy, but also a particularly a policy that shows a particular hostility to corruption, both in the past and then going forward.
Now, he sounded optimistic throughout the speech, but there were instances where he showed the frustration, like when he said, no single cause can be identified to explain Nigeria's poor economic performance over the years than the power situation. It is a national shame that an economy of 180 million people could only generate only 4,000 megawatts of power.
Yes.
So,
and distributed in less.
Yeah, yes. Yeah. So what does that say? Is he expressing the outrage of Nigerians, especially at this point?
I think that, yes, I think that this is a speech that tries to articulate in a very careful, a very tactful manner, articulate the frustrations of Nigerians and also speak broadly to the expectations of Nigerians. Nigerians are an incredibly talented and skilled people. And Nigerians deserve better than they've got from their leaders and, quite frankly, from themselves, because we're all implicated in this tragedy of a country that has been, that I call a country that was conceived in hope, that has been nurtured into hopelessness, mostly by our leaders. So I think that what Buhari said is particularly pertinent, that the power situation in Nigeria, the electric power situation in Nigeria, has been one of the most profound impediments to our takeoff, industrial takeoff, as well as to the massive growth of the Nigerian economy. The amount of money that companies spend on generation, on private generators for their businesses, and also that individuals spend. It's just absolutely enormous. And also, I think that if you look at the issue of corruption, that the part of the desperation with which people steal public resources is just to provide things like power for themselves. And so if a government, Buhari's government in this case, takes seriously the transformation of the electric power industry in Nigeria, and we begin to see a significant improvement in the provision of power in our country, I think that we're going to see a payoff in economic growth, we're going to see a payoff in jobs, and we're going to see a massive reduction in the propensity of people to steal resources.
Now, he spent over 3 paragraphs talking about Boko Haram, and one thing he said that I've not had a government official say before was an acknowledgement that the leader of the Boko Haram sect actually started and was not very significant until he was killed. He said extrajudiciously killed by the police. This is something that no government official in the past, as far as I know, will acknowledge that it triggered what we now know as the Boko Haram of today. Is that significant for why did he have to say that?
Well, I think it's a breath of fresh air, really. In one of my recent columns, I proposed that Buhari should speak truthfully to Nigerians, and my dear friend Alo Dumese also made the same point in one of his columns. It's essential to governance because trust is inevitable if there's going to be any sense of a community, and a leader the president of a country is the leader of a community of people, in this case, a community of Nigerians. It is absolutely well known that the leader of Boko Haram was extrajudicially executed by the police because he was arrested by the military, who handed him over to the police with his hands tied behind his back. An hour or so later, the police showed his remains and said he died in an exchange of gunfire. It wasn't even an intelligent lie. Okay, so that for the past governments to leave the impression that this man really was not killed by the Nigerian state, by the agents of the Nigerian state, was a particularly a childish lie. And so it's a breath of fresh air that Buhari has considered that this was a case of extrajudicial murder. And one hopes, therefore, that he recognizes and that under his governance, that there will be a respect for proper judicial procedures and processes, and that the police, and by the way, it's also well known amongst Nigerians that the Nigerian police carry out massive levels of extrajudicial execution of those in detention and those who've been convicted. So those are areas that the government must get into so that we begin to respect the sanctity of life in our country, and we begin to respect what we call the rule of law and due process.
All right, Professor Ndibe, we are really out of time, but I want to ask you one more question. He said that Nigeria has a window of opportunity to fulfill our long-standing potential of pulling ourselves together and realizing our mission as a great nation. And I want to ask you, do you think that the speech and the tone of this new administration is in the right path to that?
There's no question in my mind that this is a speech that fits the moment, that Buhari has actually given a speech that rises to the occasion. But of course, having given a speech, because talk is cheap, as the Americans say, having given a marvelous speech, it is now he has a challenge, and all of us have the challenge of living up to the precepts that he's laid out today. And we hope that he rises to that occasion and that challenge, and that he insists that anybody who is going to work with him, and indeed those who are in government broadly in Nigeria, would also rise to those to that new day that he's announced today.
All right, Professor Ndibe, thank you so much for joining us.
It's my delight, Rudolf.
All right. When we come back, we have a special panel of experts who are going to come and help us understand all the events of today, so stay tuned. And remember, we're still going to give you the chance to give us your feedback on what we've been discussing today. Once again, thank you for watching and stay tuned.
Ẹni tí ò ní bí rẹ̀ kó má ṣe dènà fún mi.